Okay, I've got a Craftsman LT1500, and what it does is when it's in low gear it goes very slow, but it gets into a strain it won't go at all. So you have to switch up to a higher gear to get it to move, and then once it finally starts to move, it moves too fast, and that's because the drive belt is wore almost out. So I'm gonna have to change it today. And the trouble is, I've seen this before, is the pulley that this drive belt goes onto, I'll show you in a second, is right up against the chassis. There's no room whatsoever to squeeze a belt over that pulley unless you drop the rear end, drop the whole transmission and everything. That's take both wheels loose, jack up the thing, and drop the transmission. Here you can see the problem is that belt right there has to go around this big pulley here, which is right up against the chassis over there, and there's not enough room really to squeeze that belt between the pulley and the chassis. So the only thing you can do is drop the transmission down to get behind there. Unless you got really strong fingers, you might be able to push it in. So the first thing I'm going to do is jack this thing up, get that wheel off on that side so I can have get my fingers in behind that pulley and see what I can do about pushing it in. But I'm pretty sure I've been here before, and I need to drop the transmission. I hope not. I'm going to try to squeeze it in there without it. All right. You may have 3 bolts or 4 bolts holding the earth on, or 1 center bolt. I've got 1 center bolt, so I'm lucky. Alright, come off of there. With the wheel off now, you can see that pulley, and there's the belt right there. And that pulley is right there behind the chassis. So you can just barely squeeze your finger in between the chassis and the pulley. So we're going to give it a try and see. I think if I put a socket on that nut on top of that pulley there, I can. That's the idler. That engages the clutch. So if I think I can put a socket on there and push that out of the way and give some slack to that belt. Okay, I've got a crescent wrench on that nut, and I can push on the crescent wrench and push that pulley out of the way. It gives me a lot of slack. You can see the slack on that belt, so I think that's what I'm going to use to get the belt off. Okay, I'm giving up on this. I tried and tried and tried to get that past the pulley, get it up off there, and there's no way. So what I'm going to do is drop the transmission. There's only 4 bolts holding it on, and if I can drop it and push it in that direction, then I think that'll give enough clearance over here to get that belt off that big pulley. So let's give it a try. Okay, I've got the 4 bolts out of the transmission that holds it to the chassis. Now I'm going to jack the chassis up to get the weight off of the axle. And then the plan is to get a prybar or a screwdriver or something and push the chassis to the right and then the transmission to the left. That should make a gap over there where that belt is. Okay, chassis is lifting up now. Let's see if this theory is going to actually work. Oh yeah, yeah, it's moving. Not much, but probably enough to get that belt off. Okay, that worked. It gave me just enough room to Gave me just enough room between the chassis and the pulley to get this thing off. But it's so worn. It's probably the other one's a lot bigger and thicker and fatter. It's probably going to be more trouble getting it in than it was to get this one out. Let's see. Compare these two. You can see this is quite a bit thicker and stronger and wider. This thing's completely wore out. So here's the trick. I got it on, and no amount of squeezing or prying with a screwdriver did anything. But if I'm on the left side with the wheel on, I push my foot against the wheel, and look, it twists the transmission in such a way that it loosens that gap. So anyhow, it popped right on after I did that. So now thread it over the other two pulleys and I'm done. There it is. That way down there was a real pain to get on. I had to get a crowbar between the chassis and the pulley and push it as hard as I could to get that belt on there, and it's really tight now. So I'm kind of wondering if they're going to have any kind of idle at all. Maybe the clutch is engaged all the time, because it's really tight, even with the pedal all the way down to the brake. So maybe it'll wear in. We'll see. I'm going to put the battery in and get it started.